Ready when you are.
I'm showing 1 minute to 1:30, so I'm going to wait just a minute. All right, I have 1:30. This is Chair French convening a special business meeting of the Kansas Corporation Commission for today, Monday, March 1st, 2021. We have one item on today's agenda, and that's the consideration of an order on petitions for reconsideration in two dockets. Our presenter for this item is Mr. Brian Fedotin, and Brian, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioners. On January 14th, the Commission issued its order on pro rata reductions in KUSF support as mandated by KSA 66-2008E, applying a $30 million statutory cap. The Commission explained it had no discretion in implementing the pro rata reductions required by the statute. The order noted that the RLEX concerns that they cannot earn a reasonable rate of return under the statutory cap are best addressed by the legislature, not at the Commission. On January 29th, the RLEX filed petitions for reconsideration of that order, as well as the portion of the Commission's January 21st order adopting methodology for KUSF high-cost support cap implementation in docket 21 GIMT 095 GIT. The RLEX PFR is based on their belief that instituting the $30 million cap on KUSF support without providing alternative sources of revenue is unlawful. The RLEX claim the orders violate KSA 66-2005B, 66-2009B, 66-2008E1, KSA 77-706, and the takings clause of the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. The RLEX do not allege any error in the 2195 order other than its reliance on the 20086 order. The PFR rests upon two central arguments. First, absent alternative sources of revenue, the $30 million cap is an illegal taking. And second, the Commission should ignore the cap language in favor of other statutes. Neither of these arguments have any merit. Turning first to their takings arguments, the Private Property Protection Act does not apply. The definition section in 703 defines private property as any real property or interest arising from or relating to any real property in the state that is protected by the Fifth or 14th Amendment of the Constitution, and it goes on, but it makes clear a KUSF subsidy is not real property and therefore cannot qualify as private property under the Private Property Protection Act. While the Fifth Amendment offers broader protections in that act, it still does not help the RLEX here. First, the Fifth Amendment provides no person shall be deprived of property without due process of law. Here, the RLEX were given due process. There was an evidentiary hearing where they fully participated and were represented by counsel. And over staff's objections, the RLEX testimony on alternate sources of revenue was allowed into the evidentiary record. Second, the statutorily mandated pro rata reductions to the KUSF support have a reasonable relation to a proper legislative purpose and are neither arbitrary nor discriminatory. Therefore, due process is satisfied. Third, the KUSF is a subsidy, not an entitlement or a fundamental right. The RLEX own witness testified that earning a state prescribed rate of return on investment is an opportunity, not a guarantee. That same witness admitted that the legislature can modify the KUSF as it sees fit, even abolishing the KUSF in its entirety. Fourth, the RLECs are not operating at a loss as a result of any pro rata reductions. Their witness, Meredith, acknowledges that they would experience a diminished return, but not a negative equity return under the pro rata reductions. Therefore, the Commission's order applying the legislatively mandated pro rata reductions in KUSF supports satisfied due process and do not constitute an illegal takings. The other main argument advanced by the RLECs is that the Commission should ignore KSA 66-2008E in favor of other statutes. Before getting into statutory interpretation, this order notes that the RLECs accuse the state of Kansas, i.e. the legislature, of violating their rights by instituting the $30 million cap. Yet the RLECs do not provide any authority to suggest the Commission has any discretion to ignore the legislature. The order goes into the language of KSA 2008E3 that says, notwithstanding any other provisions of law, the total KUSF distributions shall not exceed an annual $30 million cap. That language explicitly supersedes any other provision of law, including KSA 66-2005. Since the RLECs cannot identify any legal authority that requires alternate sources of revenue before their subsidies can be reduced, they attempt to confuse the issue by citing the affordable local rate provision of KSA 66-2005E and their carrier of last resort obligations in KSA 66-2009. The local rate provision does not prohibit carriers from having rates that exceed the affordable rates. In fact, it explicitly allows rates to exceed those affordable rates. Similarly, their reliance on their COLR obligations ring hollow. 66-2009A entitles local exchange carriers serving as carriers of last resort to recover their costs of serving as carriers of last resort. But no RLECs have claimed that they're not receiving enough support to meet their COLR obligations, nor have they provided any evidence that the pro rata reductions would impair their ability to serve as carriers of last resort. In interpreting KSA 66-2008E1, the RLECs argue that the phrase subject to the annual cap established pursuant to subsection E3 modifies only the reasonable opportunity for recovery, thereby admitting that subsection E3 does in fact modify their reasonable opportunity to recover. Therefore, the RLECs acknowledge the $30 million cap restricts their reasonable opportunity to recover their embedded costs, revenue requirements, investments, and expenses. Accordingly, the RLECs defeat their own claim that the state of Kansas has violated their rights to traditional rate of return regulation, which is what they rely on in making investments to meet their state-imposed duties. This order denies the petitions for reconsideration both in the 20086 and 21095 dockets in their entirety. With that, I'm available for questions, commissioners.
Thank you, Brian. I'll turn to my fellow commissioners to see if they have any questions of you. Commissioner Duffy?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Keen?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No questions of me. One comment. Brian, thanks much for your effort on this order. I think the order is it's quite thorough and quite dispositive, in my opinion. We're grateful for your work. With that, I have no other questions, and I would move approval of the order.
Thank you, Commissioner Keen.
I second Commissioner King's motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the order on petitions for reconsideration. Is there any further discussion of that motion? Hearing none, those in favor of approving the order, please vote aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. The order is approved. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Hearing no further business to come before us today, I would entertain a motion to adjourn the special business meeting.
So moved.
Second,
Motion and a second to adjourn. Those in favor, please vote aye.
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 Aye. Thank you all. We are adjourned.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.